and you see we're in a cooling period.
Well, I'm not sure.
Bernie Sanders made his latest appearance on the Joe Rogan podcast, and I think even he was surprised by how deep the brain worms have gone into Joe Rogan's head. So in this video, I have 3 clips to share, and these all come from a 10-minute span within the middle of the podcast, just to show you how packed with garbage this episode was. I've seen all of Bernie's appearances on Rogan's show, and I think this one by far is the worst one. Not necessarily because of Bernie, though you could argue maybe he could have come better prepared. But the issue here is that Rogan brings up things that you'd like, how you wouldn't know what they are unless you read them beforehand, because he gets down these rabbit holes, or he just reads the title of articles. Wait for that one, how stupid that is. But I'll get there. Let me just start with the first clip here. This one is on the progressive taxation system, where a 100 millionaire apparently doesn't know or pretends not to know how this works.
At a time of massive income and wealth inequality, you don't give tax breaks to billionaires. You demand that they start paying their fair share of taxes. And one of the problems that we have, it's not just an American issue, it's a global issue. A lot of these zillionaires are hiding their money in tax havens in the Cayman Islands and elsewhere. And that's an international issue. But I think we have to have a fair tax system which says that individuals and wealthy and corporations that are making a whole lot of money start paying their fair share of taxes.
What is their fair share?
I don't know. I mean, you know, under Eisenhower, the very rich paid, at their upper levels, 90%, you know. But let me be very honest with you, Joe, on this one.
90% is kind of crazy, though, right?
No, that's not across. That's just for the, you know, your billionth dollar. You know what I mean? It's not your first dollar. It's not
so if
like,
you make $1 billion, you pay $900 million in
no,
taxes?
No, that's not what it means. It means on your $900 million, you're going to pay 90%.
Okay.
All right.
Just incredible. Joe Rogan is a 100 millionaire and either is pretending not to know or actually doesn't know how a progressive taxation system works. You are taxed on the dollar above. So say the highest tax bracket is $500,000. You're taxed 90% in this scenario. Taxed 90% on the $500,001. You're taxed on the $1 and above. So this, like, good God. To bolster Bernie's point here, highest U.S. marginal tax income rate. So this has dropped considerably over the last several decades. And you wonder why inequality is so poor. Look back at how things were in the 50s and 60s and compared to now. So this goes to Brookings here, where they write, over the last 50 years, tax rates for the wealthiest Americans have declined by 40%, while tax rates for the average Americans have remained roughly consistent. Weird how that works. This decline in tax rates for the wealthy has coincided with an increase in income inequality, where most of the wage gains have been concentrated among a relatively small portion of the American people. For example, since 1979, earnings for households in the top 1% of the income distribution have risen over 250%. At the same time, many households at the middle and bottom of the income distribution have experienced stagnating incomes or even declines in earnings. And of course, this also gets to the issue of a need for a wealth tax, because you may have someone who's worth billions of dollars claiming they make 70 grand a year, yet they're worth billions of dollars. So there needs to be a way to tax that, a wealth tax that ensures there aren't people who are worth billions while there are others who are homeless. Let me get to the next clip now. This is where climate change comes up. And Joe Rogan, I'm going to get to the full article that he brings up here because he clearly did not read it.
You got to deal with this climate change issue. And I know that, you know, there are some people who think climate change is a hoax. It ain't a hoax. I think the last 10 years have been the warmest on record. And we can create millions of good-paying jobs, transforming our energy system away from fossil fuel to energy efficiency, to solar, to wind, and other sustainable energies.
I think the climate change issue is very complicated. And I think, did you see the Washington Post piece that they wrote, where they did this long-term view? First of all, the reality is that the Earth's temperature has never been static, right? We could both agree on that. It's always been up and down. There's been ice ages and heat waves. And then the Washington Post looked at it. What was the time period that they looked at? That essentially they found that we're in a cooling period. That the Earth over the past X amount of years, and this was like a very inconvenient discovery, but they had to report the data, and kudos to them for doing that. Scientists have captured the Earth's climate change over the last 485 million years. Here's a surprising place we stand now. So look at the far end of that graph, and you see we're in a cooling period.
Well, I'm not sure. I didn't read that article, but
Yeah.
the scientists who are out there, I think.
I know, but there's a lot of money involved in that too, Bernie. That's part of the problem. There's a lot of money involved in this whole climate change emergency issue, and there's a lot of control.
I'm going to get to this article. It is remarkable. He clearly did not read it while claiming he knows what's in it. This is, before I even address that, just quickly, because he brings up, the control, all the power that these scientists want, or something. The fossil fuel industry spent $219 million to elect a new U.S. government. Take a look at the industries pouring money into politicians. It's not the science community, you idiot. But don't worry, he reads the Washington Post, or at least reads the bolded headline, doesn't even read the subheading. An effort to understand Earth's past climates uncovered a history of wild temperature shifts and offered a warning on the consequences of human-caused warming. Why would they write that if this was apparently an article saying, actually, climate change isn't a really big deal because the Earth cools and warms? Yes, that is true. The Earth cools and warms. What he fails to tell you is if you scroll down a little bit and maybe read the article, it says this. The timeline illustrates how swift and dramatic temperature shifts were associated with many of the world's worst moments, including a mass extinction that wiped out roughly 90% of all species and the asteroid strike that killed the dinosaurs. Quote, we know that these catastrophic events shift the landscape of what life looks like. When the environment warms that fast, animals and plants can't keep pace with it. At no point in the nearly 500 million years that Judd and her colleagues analyzed did the Earth change as fast as it is changing now. This is the point he's supposed to be taking away from this. Yet, the point that he takes away is that actually we're in a cooling period. There were no humans back here, you idiot. Of course, human existence was only able to develop during this period that is a cooler period in the billions of years that the Earth has existed. That has nothing to do with how fast it is warming now and how much we are screwed. In the same way as a massive asteroid hitting Earth, what we're doing now is unprecedented. Like, just read the article, for the love of God. This gets to, watching this interview actually sort of altered my opinion on appearing on a show like Joe Rogan. Because it's one thing to be interviewed by somebody and get your message out to as large of an audience as you can. It's another when it's a discussion with a complete moron, where he talks at least half the time spreading his absolute garbage that he read on Facebook. Like, I get it. Bernie, he had moments where he's getting out his message about income inequality. That stuff is great. But then this moron chimes in. It's just like, what are we doing here? Are you really speaking? Are you really getting through to his audience when they hang on to his word, not necessarily the guest's word? It's just, look, I still think it's important to diversify who you're talking to and ensure you get your message out to many different people. But when you come on a show like this, understand they're going to bring up things that you've never heard of in your life, or they're going to misconstrue articles that you didn't read. And you're not going to know how to combat it unless you read those articles, unless you're really deep in right-wing rabbit holes and understand the bullshit that they are spewing. It's going to be hard to retort what they are saying. This gets to the next one. This another example of what Joe Rogan does.
These things like they're trying to institute in the UK where they have these 15-minute cities, this concept where you're not allowed to travel. They'll be able to look at your carbon footprint. See, that's the problem.
No, the problem is that you're an idiot who doesn't actually read anything and trust whatever memes you see on Facebook. No, there are not 15-minute cities that prevent you from moving. That does not exist. That is not a thing. I'm going to get to what rabbit hole he fell into this time. But this is, again, the problem when you're on a podcast like this, is if you are not in these rabbit holes with them, if you're not actively searching out what these people are reading and thinking, then you're not going to know how to retort this. I only know about this because I looked into it, and clearly you could see how Rogan fell into this garbage. So 15-minute cities, how they got caught in conspiracy theories. The idea behind 15-minute cities is actually a good idea. So it's for everyone to live within a 15-minute walk or bike ride from all basic services we need, be it schools, clinics, or parks. The ultimate goal is to reduce traffic, but also emissions that are driving global warming. But it benefits people. This is to have everything so close is a benefit to the average person. It means less time commuting to whatever it is you need to get to. So it's a positive for people to try and design cities around this. It isn't preventing you from leaving. Of course, you could leave. You're not walled in. But this is how it fell into a misinformation storm. So it was in Oxford where this got mixed up with the 15-minute city. Last November, Oxfordshire City County Council approved the creation of traffic filters enforced through cameras in 6 key locations. Private cars would not be allowed through without a permit, which they could use up to 100 days per year, but all other vehicles would be exempt to incentivize the use of public transport and cycling. So this was for very specific roads where they're essentially medieval roads. These are roads that were not meant for lots of traffic, and they're getting clogged up, making it hard for emergency vehicles, making it hard for public transportation to get through. But these cameras would operate within 12-hour periods during rush hour. Any driver going through the filter who is neither exempt nor using a permit would be charged a £70 penalty. So as this article writes, quote, Oxford has had terrible traffic for decades. The filters are modeled to reduce traffic by 20 to 30% inside the ring road, leaving space on our tiny medieval roads for those who really need to drive, buses, deliveries, businesses, people with limited mobility. The idea is to actually improve the community for everyone. But the way it's being construed here by Rogan, who's combining these two things into one story, is that, oh, they're controlling people, they can't leave. That's not what it is at all. And as BBC writes here, on social media, some users suggest this was part of a sinister plot to confine people to their local areas for the sake of the environment. This is what Rogan fell into. Others wrongly linked the traffic filter scheme to a separate council proposal to introduce 15-minute neighborhoods. Also what Rogan fell into. It's incredible. Quote, people have come up to me and said, is it true that we're not going to be allowed out of our houses? That it's going to be just like the coronavirus lockdown? So council people were getting questions about this because they fell into the garbage. Leafletting campaigns accusing councils of treating people like guinea pigs were organized. Just amazing to see how something that is actually trying to benefit people, society, communities, gets construed with another story in a very specific area where the roads are medieval into this mass conspiracy to try and control people. Just absolutely stupid. And on top of that, it hasn't even been done. It was supposed to be a trial that was supposed to be implemented, I believe, this summer. It's been delayed by 2 years. So now they're doing, they're doing toll roads, basically, for where you have to pay £10 to get on the road. Like, it's just amazing. Amazing. This is why these sorts of, appearances by people who mean well, want to get their message out, people like Bernie Sanders, it's impossible for anyone to be properly prepared for the kind of rabbit holes that they're going to go down when it's someone like Joe Rogan that they're talking to.